Hello, everyone. Ladislas Maurice from thewanderinginvestor.com. So today I'm very excited to have Mariusz Skonieczny from microcapexplosions.com. Mariusz, how are you?
Hey, thanks for having me.
So the reason I asked Mariusz to come to the channel today is because he's got a unique way of investing, and he invests in a sector that very few people look at, which is microcaps. So Mariusz, can you tell us about microcap investing and why people should look at it?
Yeah, so microcaps are simply companies that have smaller market capitalizations. Just different definitions. Less than 100 million, maybe less than 500 million, but I would say less than 100 million. And most of the time they are companies that are a little bit earlier in their development stage, and most of the time they trade on secondary exchanges like OTC, which is over the market, Canadian Stock Exchange, or TSX Venture, which is Toronto Stock Exchange Venture. These are mostly the ones that I focus on, but I know that there's like a microcap space in Australia, and I know that if you're in London, there's AIM, but I don't really focus on those simply because I have plenty of opportunities on those three that I mentioned.
Isn't liquidity an issue in those stocks?
Liquidity is always an issue, but I look at it as an opportunity because liquidity is an issue for a lot of people. And so it keeps them away. My competition is out. I mean, that's number one reason why I invest in those things, not because, they offer a huge upside or this or that. It's because I don't have much competition. That's why. And when you have very little competition, the probability for finding good deals or probability of mispricing is higher than when you have a lot of competition. But this alone, lack of competition alone, doesn't guarantee success, because I would say 80 to 90% of these companies that are trading there are something that I would not touch. So I just focus on the 10 to 20%.
I think that's a very interesting concept that when you mention that there is very little competition, because you're right. When you deal with the large caps, there are essentially all these hedge funds that are in on it with whole teams of analysts. It's very hard as an individual retail investor to get an edge, essentially. So your methodology is in many ways unique in the sense that very few people do it, but it's actually not that complicated, but it's very time consuming. So can you elaborate on how you are able to go through all of those companies and actually find the ones that are interesting?
Okay, so I will usually go through every company on an exchange. And it's not like I do it daily. But for example, recently I went through 700 or 800 companies listed on Canadian Stock Exchange. That's it. That's all there is on that exchange. And I went one by one. And it does, of course, take time, right? But it's not as time consuming as people think. It would take you a lot longer to do this in NASDAQ, because NASDAQ, I mean, those companies are real. Like, they have revenues. A lot of times they have something, they are further along than in the development process, where the companies on Canadian Stock Exchange, which is called Exchange for Entrepreneurs, you will have some companies that don't have any revenues, or you will have companies that, are looking for gold or oil and gas or pharma, no revenues, just promises. So like I look at it, I'm like, no way am I getting involved in cannabis or mushrooms or anything like that. So it's quickly, boom, boom. No, that's not the business model that I want. I want real businesses. I want real businesses with real customers, real revenues, real profit margins. And those are the ones that I focus on. And there's only maybe like 20% of them. And then from that 20%, you narrow it down to the best ones. And these are the ones that I do a lot of work on, which means I call the management, I call the customers, I call the suppliers, I call the former employees, current employees, because there's not enough information on them. I mean, yeah, they have financials and stuff, but I want to know the truth. I want to know why the customers are buying the product, because I want to know if it's for real. I don't want to buy a story, and I'm not looking for something perfect. There's no such thing as a perfect stock or perfect company. I want to know what it is. So if I call former employees, I'll find out all the dirt that I need to find out on the CEO or on what happened with the company, and then I can make a decision. Okay, well, I know the goods, the bads, the average. Now, do I want to get involved? But this kind of work actually bears fruit when you don't have any competition. because you can get an informational advantage. Where if I did this kind of work on a lot of the stocks on NASDAQ, let's say I did this on Tesla. I called a bunch of people. Oh, why do you like Tesla? What makes Tesla so special? Like, who cares? Everybody knows about Tesla. So this kind of work doesn't get you much advantage, any edge. But this kind of work hugely sets you apart in the microcap space because there's no analysts covering them, because there's no institutions usually. So when you get on the phone with the CEO, you get on the phone and you find out all this information, then yeah, it matters. And that's how you can make millions, and that's how you can change your life by doing this kind of work.
Do these suppliers and former employees actually like want to talk to you? Like, isn't it, I'd be a little bit surprised if someone just called me out of the blue and said, hey, you know, let's talk about your former employer, etc. Like, people make the time?
You can't make assumptions that they're not going to talk to you. Okay. Like the other day, I called the former CEO. He got fired. And I said, you got fired, right? And I said, look, I'm going to cut to the chase. I'm thinking about investing in this company. I want to put some money in. I don't want to lose money. So tell me what the hell is going on, because I don't want to lose money. That's how I started the conversation. And he started laughing. He was like, haha, okay. And then he talked to me, so I'm straight up. It's like, look, I don't want to get involved in the fraud. You got fired. What happened? Tell me what you can tell me, and I'll take whatever you give me.
And it's interesting because what you're doing is, it doesn't require any special skill at the end of the day. Just being able to, read the balance sheets and the cash flow statements, et cetera. But it takes a lot of dedication. And that's something that a lot of investors out there just don't do or don't have. They're just happy to just follow some tweet, and they just buy the stock from this guy on Twitter, et cetera. And then they don't really understand what happened when it blows up in their faces. But you actually go to the fundamentals into these markets where you're amongst the only one that's operating. So it's a very interesting way of going about investing. And I have to say, the methodology is really interesting. So can you give us a concrete example of a stock that you invested in and why? Give us a bit of a case study.
So I'll give you two examples. One is the mining stock that, you and I talked about. I hate mining stocks, but I found with this company because it came from the mining stocks. So the name is Oroco. The ticker symbol is OCO. And when I got involved in this company, they were in the process of winning or fighting a legal battle over copper property located in Mexico. So that property was sold in 2000 from a Mexican guy to a crook. And the crook bought the property and never paid the Mexican guy. And then, so the Mexican guy tried to get the property back, but it was complicated because it involved 3 different jurisdictions. Bahamas, which is where the papers were filed, Mexico, which is where the property was, and then US, which is where the crook was. And he had no way of fighting the battle. And Oroco said, hey, we're going to get you the property back. We'll pay for the legal fees and everything. And we will get 50% of the property in return. And so they won the legal battle. And when I got involved, and what was happening at that point is that the property wasn't properly registered in Mexico because Mexico wasn't recognizing the win yet. So it was going to take some time. But there was a separate lawsuit in Arizona, which was about taking an ownership interest of the entity that they were fighting for in Mexico. So in other words, Oroco owned both entities, that both entities in the lawsuit. I was like, I can't believe you own both entities. But it was about foreclosing on that entity that they were fighting with. And once they were successful on foreclosing it, then they could just cancel the lawsuit. So I was collecting legal documents from the Arizona court. I was on the phone with the court. Every time they posted something, I would get on the phone and I would buy the document. So I was literally seeing how the lawsuit was progressing faster than the company itself, because they had to wait for the lawyers. And I was even on the phone with the judge talking about the case. So I looked at it and I was like, there's zero probability they're going to lose. Zero, completely zero, because every point that the other party brought up, they were just slapped. No, it's wrong. I'm like, they're going to win. And nobody wanted to look at it because it was trading on TSX Venture. And people told me, well, we don't get involved in legals. Well, I mean, this is I'm not even a lawyer. This is obvious that they're going to win. So when I got involved, the market cap was $3 million. And I looked at the property. I'm like, the property is worth 500 million easily, because it's not some little dinky property. It's a property that like professors used in geological books to show what a good copper deposit is. So of course they won the legals. Everything was canceled. Everything was registered properly. And then the market cap goes to like 500 million. I make like 6 million on it or something like that. And so it's an example of a success story in the mining space. You know, there was no competition. The work, you know, paid off. Nobody was following it. And as a result, you know, the stock is pulling back recently because of the Ukraine and everything going on. But it went from like a penny to almost $4. Okay, I got involved at 4 pennies, so I made almost 100 times my money, and I still hold the stock. But of course, now it pulled back a little bit. But you know, this doesn't change the story of how you can, you know, make money from zero competition and inefficiencies.
Fascinating. And the second example?
And the second example is my most recent one, which is Voxtur. So I used to be a real estate appraiser. Right after I graduated college in 2003, I was a residential appraiser and commercial appraiser. And so when I was going through all the companies on TSXV, which I think is like 3,000 or 2,000, something like this, I found this company called Voxtur. Well, at that point, it was called iLookabout. And what they were doing is they were making appraisals faster. And this is a big deal because in the US, the bottleneck to the real estate transaction is the appraisal. The average age of an appraiser is 62 years old. They learned how to use a computer yesterday. They're not, you know, very technologically well, but they are the bottleneck. There's not a lot of them because nobody from college goes into appraising, unlike me. You know, I did, but nobody else does. It's a second job. So it's like you either sell candles, become a real estate agent, or you know, you become an appraiser, but you don't go out of it from college. So there's a shortage of them. And so that company realized that there was a shortage of them, and they started putting a company together through various acquisitions of databases to make the appraisers faster, to inject the information into the appraisal reports to make them faster. And when I looked at it, it was before COVID. I was like, oh, it's a nice idea, but adoption takes forever. And then when COVID came, I was like, oh my God, they're going to change. They're going to have to change because now people cannot inspect the properties. It's going to be hell. The whole industry is going to change. And then I of course, I jumped in. I did my work. I talked to the CEO. I talked to everybody I could get on the phone. And, you know, the stock is like 10x from the bottom of COVID. And I'm like up 4x. And I have like 1.5 million into it. And I truly think I'll make like 30 million on this because this is just beginning. Like the stock is like boiling right now. If it wasn't for the Ukraine, it would just probably be already at 3 times higher than today. But the things are happening. And then they also have another thing in the books that could really take it very high, which is attorney opinion letter, which is an alternative product to a title insurance. I don't want to make it too long, but title insurance is like a scam where, you know, the title companies are just literally stealing money from the customers because the claims are so low in relation to other insurance products. So like the whole industry is shifting and there's a product called attorney opinion letter, which is probably going to be an alternative to the title insurance. And the regulators are in the middle of like approving it. And Voxtur has a patent on it, along with the data collection. I mean, when they approve this, oh my God. I mean, I think the moon is going to be, you know, just a one station when that happens. So it's an example of like, nobody's paying attention. Nobody understands the industry. I took the time to understand it. I know the real estate space because I was an appraiser. I know exactly what they have to do. I know why this thing is going to work. And the stock is trading on TSX Venture. Probably next quarter, it's going to be on NASDAQ. And when it is on NASDAQ, you know, things change because now it's going to be exposed to all these investors. So yeah, so it's a successful story already, but it's also in the process of being more successful.
Cool. So obviously none of this is investment advice. Cool. So can you tell us, Mariusz, how people can follow you, where they can find more information?
Yeah. So take my name, take my impossible to pronounce and spell name, put it into YouTube. You'll find my YouTube channel, subscribe to it. If you want to hear the story about the company that I said about, I have a playlist about it. Also, I have a playlist about Oroco. So that's on the YouTube channel. If you want to, look at microcap explosions, which is a paid service, that's where I talk about other stocks, other microcap stocks that I found, which are not available to public. So that's microcapexplosions.com.
Fantastic. So all the links are below. Mariusz, thank you very much for your time today. Really appreciate it.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Cheers.